Hello and welcome to the 23rd edition of Drive-Thru Review. This is the second part in a two-part series on some two-player Decktet games. This one will be focused on Magnate. It's similar to Battle Line in some ways. I'm going to start off by showing some real basic structure of the board that you'll be making with the cards, and then get into some resource generation. Now this game actually requires that you have a bag of cubes or some kind of components. At the Decktet site you can get like some poker chips that are specific to games like this that use resources, not necessarily for this particular game, but to games that maybe require some cubes or some other kind of components to push around in addition to the cards. Right now, I actually made a couple player aids for this game and the game in the first video, but they're still being approved by the Board Game Geek admin. But hopefully you can go look at the Decktet or Emu Ranchers or Magnate file sections in the near future and find these, as I find them helpful personally, which is why I made them. This game actually requires the use of the pawn cards, which are part of the quote-unquote extended Decktet, and they'll be going in the middle of the board along with the excuse. And just again, I want to thank Nate Straight for sending me the Decktet. We've had a lot of fun with it at lunch at my work, and I continue to have fun with it. I actually played a couple games with my mother yesterday, and she also enjoyed it. So let's jump right into it and go from there. Okay, so here's how you play Magnate. And like I said earlier, this is similar in vein to a Battle Line or that type of a game. But it's totally different. I think you need to throw out, anything you've heard about Battle Line or played in Battle Line and really approach this with a fresh set of eyes. It's also been compared to Catan, the card game. And like I said, you take that with a grain of salt, I guess. There are some similarities. They're sort of in the same vein, but they play quite a bit differently. So what you're trying to do here is control these provinces here. So in the middle here is the excuse, and then to the left and right of the excuse you have the pawn cards. And remember, these are the cards that show 3 of each suit. Now what you're going to be trying to do is win control of these provinces. And the way that you do that is everybody's going to start with a hand of 3 cards, and they're going to be playing cards on either side of a province. Now you can only play a card that matches the suit of the province. So in this case I've got the 7 of orange and yellow, and I can play that here because he's got an orange and yellow on that side. So that's legal to play him there. So right now I'm exerting 7 influence on this province. If my opponent could come along and on their turn play the 9, which has a wave and a green knot there, and this one's got a wave on the side of it. So if this were the end of the game, he'd win this province because he's got 9 points of influence and I've got 7 points. It's feasible though that on a later turn I could have come along and played this 6, and I could play that there, and that would give me 13 points of influence. Now the trick to this is I can only play a card that has the same suit as this 7. I no longer can play a wave up here because there's no wave on this 7. Well, thankfully this 6 has a yellow knot, and I could play that there. So if this was the endgame configuration, I would win this province because I've got 13 to my opponent's 9. And basically whoever wins, you're going to go through the deck twice, and whoever wins for more provinces at the end of the game is going to win. Now it's possible that you could tie, and there's some tiebreakers involved, but I won't go into that. You can get the game and read the rules yourself. So like I said earlier, everybody's going to start with a hand of 3 cards, but before that you're going to shuffle the 6 crowns and deal 3 to each player. Now the crowns are not going to go in this deck. It's just going to be the number cards and the aces. So you're going to give each player 1 good of each of these colors. So in this case, I would get a brown, a green, and a black. So I give myself a brown, a green, and a black, and I like to go ahead and just put them on my crown cards. And so the opponent would get the other 3 resources in the game. And you need about 10 cubes in each color to have enough to play the game. So I'm going to start the game with these resources. Now the way that you get a card out in front of one of these provinces is you need to pay this many resources using only this color cubes. And you need to use at least 1 of each. So I could pay for this with 4 browns and 1 black, or 4 blacks and 1 brown, or 3 browns and 2 blacks, or whatever, but I got to have at least 1 of each. So the way that you're going to accumulate the goods is by, at the start of the turn, you're going to roll these dice here. Now you need 2 10-sided dice and a 6-sided dice. So I'm going to go ahead and roll the dice. And you can see I've got a 5 and a 10 showing, and a 6 on the 6-sided dice. Now the 6-sided dice only comes into play when you roll a 1 on these dice. So let's forget about that for right now. I'll come back to that. So what's going to happen now is you always take the highest number. In the case of a 10, however, you're going to basically pay each player 1 resource of the crown cards that they have face up. So since I rolled a 10, each player is going to get 1, and I'm going to get the brown, the green, and the black. And my opponent will get the blue, the orange, and the yellow, which that would be the crowns that they would have. So every turn you're going to roll the dice, and both players are possibly going to collect goods, not unlike Catan. Well, what if I hadn't rolled a 10? What if I had rolled an 8? And the 8 was the highest, because you only use the highest die. You ignore the low die. Well, if it's the start of the game, nobody's got an 8 out here, because nobody's going to have any cards in play. So nobody's going to get any resources. If I had, let's say I've got the 9 out there and I rolled a 9, this is going to pay me blue and a green. So the player who controls that 9 is going to get a blue and a green, and it's going to go into their stash. Well, you might be saying to yourself, well, how am I supposed to get any resources other than rolling 10s on my crowns? Well, here's where we come into the player's turn. So the first thing they're going to do is roll the die, collect any resources they may get, which isn't going to be a whole lot in the first few turns of the game. And then they can play a card. Now, you can play a card in one of 3 ways. At the beginning of the game, 9 times out of 10, what you're going to do is just discard a card. So if I have discarded this 5 here, I would just put it in the discard pile over here, and I'm going to receive 1 black and 1 brown resource for doing that. I get my resource, I draw a card, my turn's over. Goes to the next turn. He rolls the dice, get any resources that might be available, and he's going to play a card. Now, if you discard an ace, you get 2 of this resource. So if I discarded this brown, I'd get 2 browns. So at the beginning, you're going to be discarding cards in hopes to get some resources of the cards that are in your hand. Now, the other 2 ways that you can play a card is you can play it in front of you as a full development, or you can play it in front of you as what the rules call a property. It's sort of a half-baked development. Now, if you're going to play a full development, you can see this card requires a black and a blue, and you've got to have 1 of each and 3 total. Well, luckily, I've got 2 blacks in my pile here and a blue. So I could put this out here like that, pay these back to the bank, and now I've got a 3 sitting out here. So the next time that a 3 is rolled, and it's the highest of the 2 green 10-sided dice, this property is going to pay me a blue and a black resource. The chances of a 3 being the highest rolled die, pretty small. But let's say I wanted to put this 7 out here. Let's say I want to put that 7, but I don't have an orange and a yellow and 7 total of each. What I could do is I could put it up as a deed. And you put it up, kind of upright instead of turned 90 degrees. And what you would have to do is you have to pay one of each resource, orange and a yellow. You'd pay that to the bank. Now, while it's sitting out here, it does not count for influence on this property. So if the game ended this way, and my opponent's got the 9, I've got the 7, I'd lose anyway. But even if I had a 9 here, if it wasn't fully developed yet, it's not going to matter at the end of the game scoring. Now, the way that I would get this turned is if I accumulated resources over the course of the game, and I start putting them on there to pay for that. And once I get 7 of any color that matches, I don't need, different ones at this point. But once I get 7 on there, so I've got 6, and I got 7 on my turn, then I can pay for them off of the card, and then turn that, and that's fully developed now. So now it'll pay me both resources, whereas before, if I had rolled a 7 and it was not fully developed yet, it's only going to pay me one of my choice. So if I rolled a 7 and it was the highest number on the green die, I could choose to get an orange or a yellow. But it's nice because you're going to get a resource and you can basically just plunk it on there, and it sort of starts to, pay for itself. So basically, you're going to be playing cards, you're going to be discarding or selling cards to get more resources, and trying to get a good variety of cards out here so that you can get resources, but also trying to maintain and be the highest, card on each of these provinces. Also, at any time, you can trade in 3 of one good to the bank for any one good. So I could trade in those 3 greens for a yellow if I wanted to get one. Now, I have yet to talk about the 6-sided die. And what does this work for? Well, this represents taxation. And what is taxation? Well, if you ever roll a 1 on any of these dice here, let's say I rolled a 1 and a 7. So because the 7 was the highest on the 10-sided die, we know that this is going to pay out for us because we've got a 7. But if you ever roll a 1, before you pay out the resources, you have to do taxation. And that's where this dice comes in. So if you ever roll a 1, you have to tax. And you tax according to this 6-sided die. Now, I actually made a little player aid here. And there's 6 different suits. And this is sort of a little cheat sheet to tell you, okay, I rolled a 6, so I've got to pay out taxes on the yellow. Or if I had rolled a 1, I had to pay out taxes on the black. And what it means by taxes is if you have more than one of a certain color, and whatever the color that might be taxed. So if I had rolled a 4, I'd be taxed on browns. So I have to get rid of all but one of that color resource. So I'd lose those browns. However, if I have resources on a developing property, this acts as a tax shelter, and you will never lose. Even if this yellow's got taxed on here, I won't ever lose them if they're on this property. Now, once you put them on there, you can't move them. So that's basically what you're going to be doing. You're going to be rolling the dice, seeing if you have to tax anything, then playing a card, either selling it or putting it face up in front of you as a developing property or as a fully developed property. And then it's your opponent's turn. You go through the deck twice, and then the game's over. Whoever has the most provinces that they fully control is the winner. This is a game that I would highly, highly, highly recommend. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it, but while the cards are sitting here in front of me, I just want to say, it seems kind of simple. It seems kind of, I don't know. You look at the rules and you're like, oh, you roll dice. That's pretty random. But I tell you what, I've played this 3 times now. And I know that's not a lot, but the strategies are really starting to become apparent to me. And I find this game very fascinating. And this is the game that Nate Straight has been evangelizing, and I think the main reason he sent me this Decktet. There's another review on The Geek about it. Go watch that review too. Pull down the rules and look at this game. And this is really, really a fun little simple game with a lot of depth to it. 4 or 2 player card game. I'm not talking like Age of Steam, but it's pretty fun. And, it's light. And anyway. Well, I hope you enjoyed my overview of Magnate. I just wanted to close off this little 2-part thing with saying that there's quite a few other games that are available for the Decktet. I've only personally played these two. I'm definitely going to spend a little time, when I get some time to look at the other games. So I've seen that there's more of a traditional type of rummy game. There's a game that's sort of like Loco or Botswana. If you're familiar with that, it looks pretty fun. And there's a Carcassonne type of game. It actually looks pretty cool, just from reading the rules. And then I saw there's sort of like a beta playtest game. I can't remember the name of it. Oh, it's something Sun. If you go to the Decktet page, you'll see it, and it's sort of like a raw type of game, and it looks pretty interesting. So anyway, so hope you enjoy it. Go print out the Decktet or go buy it and buy the book. Thanks.